I'm going to give setup cost example based on a typical project launching a small range of maybe 500 to 1200 units, keeping in mind that every product type and project is different and a lot of the cost relies on the material that you use. And the investments that I'm going to list are typically stretched over a period of 6 to 8 months. So your first investment is your setup, design, reports, consults, and branding, etc. A lot of one-time setup costs that won't be ongoing. Some will be still ongoing, such as some design costs, but a lot of them won't be. We're estimating around 10,000 Australian dollars for that. Once tech packs are created, you can get product quotes, but you do not commit to the next stage of sampling until you work this in with your budget and approve these prices to your manufacturer before you go into the next investment of samples. So your second investment is samples. We're estimating about USD 3,000, AUD 4,300 for this. However, it really depends on how many samples you need and how many sample types you need and how many styles you have. In terms of sample types, we are going to cover that separately in the sample section in a different slide. But this is a pretty good average of how much it will cost to create samples for a startup range. You need to, and once your samples are final, you can get feedback on these, and then you can make a final decision on which styles, colors, and quantity you want to go into bulk production with. Now, bulk production, we're estimating about 20,000 US or 29,000 AUD based on those mentioned quantities of 500 to 1,200 units. Shipping and import, it varies a lot, but roughly USD 3,000, AUD 4,300 is a pretty good average according to the above numbers. Now, a 50% deposit for bulk production will be required upon placing the order, and the balance will be due upon completion. If you wholesale and take deposit for these orders, you may have a lot of these upfront outlay covered by your wholesale orders. This comes to a total of 47,000 Australian dollars. Your ongoing collection should be more profitable as many setup costs are already done, such as patterns, branding, website, etc. And also your development cost is reduced due to partly or entirely repeated styles. So ideally you will have some core styles in your collection that you repeat, whether it's entirely as it is or changing the colors or just slightly changing the style, but they are mostly the same, and this will not only help keeping your brand cohesive, but it will also be cost effective. Many fixed costs such as development, marketing, and business operations are being stretched across more items. So if you have fixed costs that are there regardless of how much you sell, once you stretch them across 500 pieces or 5,000 pieces, it will make a big impact on your margin. As quantities increase, you will also be more profitable because both the cost of production and shipping goes down with increased quantities. So typically, if you ask a manufacturer for the price of producing 100 pieces of a style versus 200 or 300 or 500 pieces, you will get different costs. And same with shipping. The bigger the shipment, the lower the cost per kilo. Pricing and budgeting. You need to set realistic pricing according to your actual cost and where you sit in the marketplace. For example, if you're starting a fashion brand using ethical and sustainable manufacturing and materials whilst offering small quantity and selling at a price point that is the same or lower than that of your competitors that are producing either larger quantity or maybe using less sustainable ethical manufacturing and material, which means cheaper prices or cheaper options, then your numbers may not add up to be profitable because you have the combination of higher unit costs than your competitors, plus your fixed expenses stretched across less quantities are eating into the margins. Often, the smaller the item also, the lower the perceived value is, yet the cost of the making may not be lowered accordingly. So the margins may be lower, and therefore you need to have higher quantity in order to be profitable. Your pricing needs to reflect the actual cost, and the design, quality, branding, and marketing needs to attract the appropriate buyer persona accordingly. Your budget should not only cover the business setup costs, including the sample and production of the first collection, but you may also need to have funding to cover an overlap of another collection if you cannot rely on the first collection being sold in time to fund the next. If you rely on this, you risk getting behind the seasons.